encourage your soul, enlighten your mind, and empower your faith. This is the Light Network. Hello and welcome to Preachers in Training. This is the podcast on which we discuss all things preaching and ministry. My name is Robert Hatfield. I want to welcome you into this season. We're coming to you once again from the exhibit hall floor at the 2024 Sevierville, Tennessee edition of Polishing the Pulpit. There's so many of these things happening these days, we kind of have to qualify where we're coming from. But we're glad that you're here, and I'm excited today to be joined again by Gary Hampton. Welcome back.
Oh, it's good to be back.
Glad you're here. Yeah, thank you for carving out some time in PTP to talk with us for just a minute or two. You have a passion for preachers, I think, given your track record and the things you've been involved with over the years, right?
I do. Yes, I do.
Tell the people about your time with Southeast Institute of Biblical Studies, what used to be called East Tennessee School of Preaching and Missions. And
when I went there, that's what it was called.
Yes.
At that particular time. Teresa and I went there July of 2006.
Oh, yeah.
And began work with them. It's kind of an interesting experience. I was the director, but as I've told a few people, the director doesn't usually decide who teaches what class.
Oh.
So I sat down with the academic dean to discover what I was going to teach at the school. And
okay.
and the elders had specified in your opening, at least in the opening quarter, you cannot teach more than one class.
Oh.
So the class they really wanted me to teach, for sure, was Homiletics 3, How to Preach 3, is what that's what it was, which is all expository preaching.
Oh, yeah.
But they need me to do that. That's in the same quarter as a freshman class on Genesis. And so I did Genesis. I did Genesis for 4 years, but the academic dean had a theory, which he brought to me. He said there had been a change, and he said, I think that the preaching classes, the preacher in his work style classes, ought to have 3 different points of view. And so he taught
Wow.
at that time, preacher in his work, and another guy taught something else, and right now I don't remember what that was. And he said, so I really need you to teach 1st, 2nd Timothy, and Titus, because it's going to give you lots of opportunities, to talk. So I gave up Genesis to teach 1st, 2nd Timothy, and Titus. And that, so I don't know, that's just showing you the years fluctuated a little bit.
Yeah.
My first year there, I taught a class which was very interesting to me in January. So we'd finished 2 quarters, and we were into the first quarter of the new year, you might say. And I got to teach systematic theology.
Oh, wow.
Which I had taken under Brother Rex Turner. And I literally told the students in a class, I said, we're going to be talking about something today that I heard Brother Turner talk about 20 years ago, and I did not believe him.
Had you come around since
I had.
then? Okay, I assume so.
I did. I just, when he first told it, of course he's talking about Genesis chapter 3, or chapter 2 and 3, he said, you should surely die, or dying you shall die. Genesis, I think, 2:17. And he said, so why didn't they die? And all of us sat there, and, we gave the typical church answers.
Yes.
You might say, well, they did die. They began to die. And he says, well, I think the guy that was picking up sticks in the wilderness would have liked that definition, because it's the same word, and he died the same day. I said, oh, okay. Well, he began to die spiritually. And I said, well, and he's back the same way. Well, I think the guy would have liked that definition too. That'd have been a good definition.
Yeah.
Said that doesn't work. Said, so how is it that God could say, in the day you eat thereof, you will die? And it means, the word literally means, it's an infinitive absolute, and it means sudden, violent, punishing death. That's what it means.
Yeah.
Okay, so then Brother Turner said, and there was a sudden, violent, punishing death that day.
Yeah.
Because Genesis 3:15, and what God has set in his mind is as good as done, so that when Revelation, and that's what he would do, he'd go to Revelation 13:8, he'd say, Lamb slain from the foundation of the world.
Wow.
And he said, so see, that day, effectively, Jesus died for Adam and Eve. And then, now he set a part that I still wonder about. I'm not saying he's wrong.
Okay, all right.
But I do wonder about. He said that God made them clothing of skins. He said, but notice that the word made there is not the word bara from chapter 1, which means to make from nothing. He said, this is the Hebrew word that means to manufacture. So he said, these skins were already in existence. He said, so my God, I don't believe my God is so cruel that he would take the skin off of a living animal and make that animal roam around with no skin.
With no skin. Okay.
And so he said, I believe that on that day, Adam and Eve offered a sacrifice under God's direction of the animals that God used to make their clothing with. And that sacrifice was the placeholder until Christ came and died.
Wow.
That's not what you really want me to start with, but that's right.
That's an amazing little story there. Wow. Yeah. Okay, we're going to dive right into the deep end here.
I guess so.
Did you teach systematic theology for a while then? From
all
that
6
point
years.
Forward?
All 6 years.
Wow.
And I have since, you don't teach systematic theology in the local church because as soon as they see those words, their eyes glaze over.
Yes,
Totally. So instead, I call it Great Bible Themes.
Okay.
And I do teach it. And I go through the same material because every Christian needs to understand these overarching principles that are really in all of Scripture. And if that's what systematic theology really is, I really prefer Brother Turner's title to his book, which is Biblical Theology. It makes more sense to me.
I can see that. Wow. I want us to talk about just your ministry for a while, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
And we've talked a little about what was East Tennessee School of Preaching and Missions. And we'll maybe work our way back up there. Eventually, what I want us to get around to is talking about just what has kept you going through all this, But tell us, if you don't mind, just how long have you been preaching? And I know like when I asked Paul Sane that question, he says, well, it depends on what you count as a sermon, whether what I did at first was a sermon. So, and I can relate to that, but I don't know, where do you put the pin in your timeline and say, this is when it started?
Okay, my first sermon was delivered when I was 14 years old in Van Horn, Texas. So that was in 1968. So that would be the first sermon.
Yeah.
But if you move on down, of course, I began doing appointment preaching at Freed Hardman in the fall of 71. And I had done some other preaching, whenever I got an opportunity as a young man. Early on, somebody had to always take me because I didn't drive, at age 14.
That's comforting.
Yes. So, in fact, when our kids at home at the church, they say, oh, I got a driver's license. I said, good. Would you please text me and just give me your route wherever you're going,
Just common courtesy.
I don't want to be there, So
who was it that encouraged you to preach that sermon at 14?
That's interesting. Jerry Mitchell, he was in the Army. Fort Bliss is in El Paso, Texas. Jerry Mitchell and another guy, we called him Coachy Roachy.
Okay.
His name is Bill Roach, and he was a coach.
Okay.
So
all right.
and he was also a policeman. Jerry, when he got out of the military, went back home to Killen, Alabama. He is an elder in Killen, Alabama.
Wow.
And he came to our wedding. He came to my sister's wedding.
Oh.
He and his wife, they came to my, just about every significant thing that happened has happened in our life. And I still call him on occasion. So Jerry and Bill Roach encouraged us to develop these lessons. And the first sermon I preached, I had 10 people respond.
Did you?
Yeah.
Okay.
And of course we went back home, and Jerry and Bill goaded my dad, saying, you have never had 10 at one time, have you? Of course, then a few weeks later, Dad had 15. So
okay. So you were preaching somewhere, not your home congregation,
right?
At that first sermon,
yeah.
Were those guys ministers or deacons or somehow involved, or what prompted them to have that opportunity to encourage you?
They were
in that way.
I think Jerry may have been a deacon. Bill was he kind of helped with the work. Nowadays we might have called him an associate minister, but that wasn't his job.
Okay.
It was just, but they just took up working with the young people.
Yeah.
And
just something they felt they needed to do or were passionate about doing, I guess.
Yeah.
So that's amazing to me. You know, when you think about what encourages, or how do we turn out, as we say, preachers. Yeah. That's just an interesting thought.
Well, the other thing, of course, is as little as 3 years old, I tell people I wanted to peach.
Yes.
That's what I was wanting to do. And as I went along, my mother, I probably would have been diagnosed ADHD if they'd have known anything about that.
If that was a thing, okay.
Of course, my mother and dad didn't use Ritalin, they used a bolo paddle. It worked really effectively.
Okay. Small doses, that's all you need.
Yeah, that's all you need. It usually worked. So, but with that being said, then she knew I need to slow down in the afternoon. Oh. So she would spread a quilt on the floor, and she would read Bible stories from Eggermeyer's Bible story book. And I've told guys that I teach preaching now that I still use those stories. That they just pop in my mind. So my mother, and by the way, Basil Barrett Baxter had the same experience.
Really?
I heard him one day he was speaking at Freed Hardeman. It was really a ladies' class, but it was in Chapel Hall, and I went.
Okay.
And I was so thrilled I went, because he told these marvelous stories, and he was explaining to these women the impact you can have on your young men. So my mom and dad did not urge me to preach, but they never discouraged me from preaching. And they gave me the beginnings of the things I would need later.
Was your dad a preacher?
He was.
Okay. So you were you grew up in an initiated environment.
I did, but interesting enough, and I don't say this negatively, neither one of my sisters wanted to marry a preacher.
Oh.
Their life experience and mine, the way that they dealt with it is just different.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
14, and then, but you said started kind of preaching by appointment when you got to Freed Hardeman and things like that, right?
And then I went to work with Allen and Edgewood. I was their associate. They had a program where they would take a guy in his third year, and that's when they had third-year Bible at Freed Hardeman. They'd take him his third year, and they would have him work closely with the elders and the preacher.
While you were a student? While you were a student.
Okay. And so I worked with the college age and some with the teenagers at Allen Edgewood, which is now North Jackson. And most people know it that way. Yeah. And really it was supposed to be a one-year program. They let me stay for 2. Oh. And Freed Hardeman, in my sophomore year, Brother Gardner announced, was going to be a 4-year school, and that was the freshman year. Oh, okay. So so here I was. I'd finished the third year of Bible. I'd finished everything I could finish in a fourth year, which would normally have been my senior year, and I entered my true senior year with needing only 3 classes. And
that's every senior's dream.
Yeah, but it gave me a great opportunity. I got hired by the Henderson Church.
Yes.
And as far as I know, I was the second in the history of the churches of Christ man to serve as a campus minister on a Christian college campus.
Wow.
Number 1 was Billy Smith.
Billy Smith, yes.
Yeah, and I followed him.
And Billy Smith is still employed by the Henderson Church.
He is, that's correct.
He's had a few years off,
Yeah,
but anyway, now he's back.
Yeah. So he was the first, I was the second.
How neat.
And I stayed, and so I was there. So that gave me a great opportunity. I had always helped Brother Holland with the preacher's lab. Even when I was in the class, I would, in those days, I just filmed it as the guys would preach their sermons, and I would review it with them by just playing the tape, and I'd make a few comments because I'd been with Brother Holland a little bit.
Okay.
And then, I'd done that every year, but in my senior year, I went to Brother Holland and I said, if the school will allow me, could I be your assistant teacher for credit? And he said, sure. And so I taught homiletics. When Brother Holland was out of town, I'd teach the class.
Wow.
I recorded all the sermons. I graded all the sermons just like Brother Holland did. And at the end of the whole year, his secretary, Brother Holland, told me, had took the averages of my grades and Brother Holland's grades, and we were 1 point apart.
Whoa.
In an entire year.
Wow. So you were able to kind of get in his head a little bit.
Oh, yeah. It was a blast.
Figure out how he did that.
It was a blast.
How long did you work for him in that capacity?
Just in that great a capacity, I only did the 1 year.
The 1 year, okay.
Because I knew that, Max Patterson had just come to Henderson in January, and I knew I wasn't going to be able to be their pulpit man, and that's fine. Brother Cecil Wright had told me, you really need to go up the ladder. You don't need to start at the top.
Okay.
You need to start down here and work your way up. He said, because our brethren have a history. If you start at the top, they will knock you off.
Okay. Yeah.
So
you got some good sound advice from a lot of different people
over
those years.
Yeah. So then I ended up going in September of 76. We moved to North Little Rock, Arkansas.
Oh, okay.
And that's where I began full-time
first located
preaching.
Okay, I see. Yeah. That time in Freed Hardeman's history is almost a legendary kind of time to be there. I mean,
it is.
You hear people who were there when you were there and think they all, the Brother Gardner era and Brother Holland was there and just on and on and on. I mean, it just sounds like it was an amazing formative time.
It was. But you had, of course, Bob Oliver is here. R.C. Oliver was his dad. And R.C. Oliver really taught English, but he would teach hermeneutics. And you needed to have his class. He was phenomenal. He was the first guy that encouraged me to write. And I submitted it to the Gospel Advocate. My first article was printed in Gospel Advocate because of Brother Oliver.
Oh, wow.
So Brother Wright was there,
yeah.
who people in Chicago would tell you, and take this correctly, there's only one Savior of the church.
Right.
He knew that too.
Yeah.
But they say he saved the church from going off into error big time.
Yeah.
Because he was in Chicago area for a time.
Wow.
And then you had Brother Woodson, tremendous teacher in many ways.
Yeah.
You had Brother Holland, who was there. Clyde Woods had come not too long before that back to Freed Hardeman. And interestingly enough, he was the only PhD in the Bible department at the time.
I see. Yeah.
He would not allow anybody to call him doctor. So to this day, his students call him Doc Woods.
That's right. Yes. Everyone calls him Doc Woods.
But did you know why?
I did. I wondered about that.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Because he didn't want anybody to think that he thought he was better than them.
Right.
And he just insisted we could not call him doctor.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. What a neat time.
Yeah.
All right. You were in Little Rock, Arkansas area, you said?
We were there 4.5 years.
4.5 years. And then where?
We went to, well, really, George Bailey called my dad. He said, "Where's Gary?" And I said, he said, he's in a meeting in El Paso, and he's coming back through. His family's here. He flew down there, and he'll fly back, and he'll be here.
Mm-hmm.
He said, "Well, I need to talk to him." I said, "Okay." So Dad called me, and I went to talk. Brother Bailey said, I want to work my way out of the pulpit." And he said, "I want you to be considered as an associate to take over the pulpit over a period of time."
Mm-hmm.
And so, wonderful, very kind thing for him to say.
Mm-hmm.
But he set up a meeting between him and then me and all the elders. I think Brother Bailey may have been an elder at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they began to talk about what was going on. And Brother Bailey had an image, a vision in his mind that the elders didn't have yet.
Oh, okay.
So what happened was they began to, as they questioned, seemed like things were running really well. And then they said, "Well, what do you think about this?" And I said, "Well, brethren," I said, "let me start with this. I would never take George Bailey out of the pulpit." So that's my own thinking on it.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, I am not going to be comfortable sitting indefinitely in the pew. I want to preach.
Yeah.
And they said, "Well, fine." We had a good meeting, closed out nice, everybody's friendly. I went on home, and I got a call from Brother Bailey, and he said, "Well, they didn't have the same vision I do." And he said, "So tell me places you'd like to go." And I named 2 places that had already talked to me.
Yeah.
And Brother Bailey said, "Well, I don't know anybody at that one place." But he said, "Where are you talking about in Mobile, Alabama?" And I told him, and he said, "Who are the elders there?" And I told him. He said, "I know those guys. Let me call them." And of course, then I got the job in Mobile, Alabama.
Yeah, because Brother Bailey.
Because of Brother Bailey. Yeah.
Was a good reference.
Not because
for
of
you.
Gary. No,
That's not what I meant to imply.
No, but I do. I mean, I know why.
Yeah.
You know, Brother Bailey opened the door.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he really did.
Yeah. You know, these names you're mentioning, Holland and Woodson and Bailey, even where we are right now at Polishing the Pulpit, I mean, these are names and voices that have filled these ballrooms that are around us right now in the not so distant past.
Yeah, it's not too far.
Yeah. All right, so then you were in Mobile, Alabama.
Yes, for almost 13 years.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
And from there?
Valdosta, Georgia.
Yes.
And that was kind of interesting. I guess the people in Mobile, if they listen to this, I'm going to be in trouble. But
oh, no.
But my dad and I talked. We would talk every Saturday. Unless I was out of the country on a mission trip, we talked every Saturday. And he would listen to what I would say. He would help me with various things. And he finally said, "Gary, I think if you're going to keep growing, you need to move." And so at that time, the folks from Valdosta came, made a visit.
Yeah.
And they wanted to talk to us, and we ended up going there. We were there 7.5 years.
Yeah.
With the Central Church, which has a history that goes all the way back to Christian Herman Dasher.
Whoa. Okay.
Which is a branch of the Restoration movement most people don't even know about.
Right.
So you had Stone, Campbell, and then Dasher.
Yeah.
Was really the another totally different branch.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That brings up an interesting point, because people ask a lot, and we get this on the podcast. How do I know when I need to leave, or how do I know when it's time to go? And it's not a one size fits all.
No.
And a long tenure is a good thing.
It is
a great blessing.
Yeah.
There can come a time when you may become so comfortable at a place that you just sort of stall because you know what you can get. I'm not saying this is what was happening with you, but it brings forth this observation. Like, I can preach like this to these people, and I could be here the rest of my life, but it's not really going to challenge me all that much to grow and to mature.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
It does. Now, there are other factors that ought to be considered. How do you work with the eldership?
Mm-hmm.
You can come in under one, if you stay long, you come in under one eldership,
right?
But you're not under the same eldership.
Even one change, an elder removed or added, it makes the eldership take a whole different complexion.
It's a whole different dynamic.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean they're bad men. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, though, your ability to work with a particular eldership as now formed, as opposed to what you started with, may not be as good. For whatever reason.
Yeah. So things change.
They do.
Congregational life is fluid a little.
It is, yeah. And, when I teach preacher students, which you asked about a while ago, one of the things I tell them is when you move somewhere, there'll be 20% of the people, roughly, who would just as soon help you keep on going.
Okay.
I said, when you leave, there'll be 20% of the people that will be glad to help you pack the moving van.
Okay, yes.
But the deal is that the 20% number is roughly the same, the percentage, but the people who comprise it are different. The people when you come in that don't want you there are the ones that may want you to stay forever.
Sure.
But now some other people would just as soon you leave.
What do you recommend that guys do with this? Some people don't like me. How do we live under that burden and awareness that I'm not everybody's favorite guy?
Well, you won't be.
Yeah.
You just want to go in knowing that.
Yeah.
I don't know. First thing popped to mind is kind of not what you asked.
Sure.
But I tell fellows that I teach and preach, and I say, if you're not going to find a perfect church, but if you did, when you arrived, it would not be perfect.
That's right.
Okay.
Because they didn't get a perfect preacher.
So you need to start out with that understanding that you're not perfect, they're not perfect. The next thing is I would try to get guys to realize you need to become so transparent that people, now I don't mean you just speak your mind at any moment.
Yeah, right.
But you need to be able to, if I've got a problem with Robert, I need to be able to go to Robert and say, Robert, I've got a problem. Can we work through this? Can we get over this? Instead of letting it boil and simmer, because you're going to get in trouble that way. That's the first thing. But if you're that transparent, then you've got to pretend that everybody else is that transparent.
Okay.
So I'll give you an example. When we moved to North Little Rock, I don't remember who it was, couldn't tell you, but Teresa one day on the way home from the church building said, I think Sister so-and-so's mad at me. And I said, now remember, I'm a preacher's kid, so there's a little bit of a twist here. I said, well, why do you think that? And she said, well, we were walking down cross paths in the hall, and she just kind of looked away from me. And I said, do you think it's possible she and her husband had a fight on the way to the church building? She said, yeah. That's possible. Do you think it might be that one of her children really acted up on the way to the church building? Well, yeah, that's possible. Is it just possible that somebody in her family, like her mom or her dad or brother or sister, might have just been diagnosed with a terrible illness? And she said, well, yeah, that's possible. I said, well, given all of that, why don't you just assume she's not mad at you until she tells you she is?
Yes.
And I function that way.
Yeah.
But I believe that if you want to stay somewhere, you got to be open, which means you're ready. If they want to come to you with a problem, you're open to talking about the problem. If they say, I don't like the way you part your hair, you got to consider, well, can I part it a different way? Am I okay with that? How's that going to impact everybody else in the church?
Yeah.
Because they may hate it the other way. So, but you've got those are some of the things you do to be able to just stay there. You cannot, if you wear your feelings on the sleeve, I guarantee you will be hurt. I guarantee it.
Yeah, it's a good point. Okay, back on your timeline a minute now. So you went to Valdosta, and then what happened?
We went to Cookeville, Tennessee.
Okay, yeah.
To the great Jefferson Avenue Church. All these churches are good churches.
Great, yeah.
We've been really blessed. Now, I told my current secretary I've had all good secretaries except for one. And I will not tell who that is.
Okay, all right.
And I won't tell where she was.
Okay, all right, that's fine.
But I've always had basically good relations with the people I work with.
Yeah.
But we went to Cookeville, working for Jefferson Avenue. We were there. We started April the 8th of 2001, and we left there July. Our last Sunday was July 8th of 2006.
Okay, to go to Knoxville. Okay. And
I don't know if we'd have left there. The elders had not asked us to leave. They had told me an interesting thing, which I still am intrigued by, because I can do meetings all over the place.
Yeah.
And I preach. I mean, do you preach a little different in a meeting? Well, yeah. You do. But basically, my preaching is my preaching. I don't change styles everywhere I go.
Right.
Basically, you might, for a particular lesson, you might use a particular different style. That's possible. But you are you. You will be about the same everywhere you go.
Yeah.
So they had told me, said, really, you are more of a professor. And that was, I couldn't eat. That may have been in December of 05. May have been.
Interesting.
Well, I got a letter and it's from Carnes Church of Christ. But see, I'd gone and spoken on their lectureship numerous times.
Yeah.
So I see Carnes, and as I was going in the house, I was thinking, somebody must have gotten sick and they need me to fill in at the lectureship.
Yeah.
I didn't notice this is Carnes, not East Tennessee. See, because there is different stationery for the two.
Yeah.
So I opened the letter, and those elders said, we'd like to talk to you about being the director. See, at that moment, what I had done in Cookeville, Brother Holland was, at that point, directing the Nashville School of Preaching.
That's right, yeah.
Okay. So I called Brother Holland. I said, would you like me to come down one day a week and teach? And he said, oh, that would be great. So I went down and met with the elders at Creve Hall.
Yeah.
And they approved of me as a teacher, and I would go down on Thursdays. I'd teach 3 classes, actually, 6 o'clock, 7:30, and 8:30. And then I'd drive back home.
Woo. So, a long day.
So I taught for him. But then one of our elders went with me for a particular series there at one point. And when he got back, unknown to me, he talked to our elders. And they sent a letter to Creve Hall. In the letter they said, we are offering you our building for you to have a satellite.
Wow.
It will be under your direction, not ours. And they asked the elders at Creve Hall asked Brother Holland, what do you think? And Brother Holland said, well, Gary, we can have him be the director there, and he'll work under me.
Yeah.
And so we were the first satellite school of Nashville School of Preaching. But the reason we were is because everybody else wanted to be in charge themselves. The Creve Hall elders were not comfortable with that because their name was associated with that school.
Yeah.
But our elders were just offering the building. Yeah. That's all they offered.
They didn't want the control of the thing.
No, they did not. Yeah. And so I was the director of the Cookeville branch of the Nashville School of Preaching. when I was contacted by Carnes.
Isn't that interesting how these pieces have all fallen into place
Yeah.
like this?
Yeah, it is.
Wow.
It is.
All right. So after Carnes, after East Tennessee School of Preaching and Missions, as it was then.
Yeah, we went to Jackson, Mississippi,
Yeah.
where we are now.
Yes.
We've been there 12 years.
Oh, yeah.
So it's almost the longest tenure we've ever had anywhere.
Sywell Road.
Sywell Road. And they've allowed me to do a lot of things. We had a school for a time on Thursday nights. We had preachers and elders from lots of places come in to that school. Now I teach for the Magnolia Bible Institute.
Oh, yeah.
And our elders have no problem with that. And I also teach for the Georgia School of Theology by internet.
Good.
I've been teaching for Southeast ever since I left.
Okay. Yeah.
By internet.
Okay.
So
you just completed that before this week when we're sitting here together, right?
I actually taught there yesterday morning.
Okay.
Or
in person or online?
In person.
In person.
I got to be there in person.
Nice.
Yesterday afternoon. It's the first time I'd seen this group in person.
Oh, fun.
And I'm teaching advanced homiletics. In other words, expository preaching.
Yes.
That's Brother Holland's. That's his legacy.
Ongoing influence.
It is,
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So when they said, we think you're more of a professorial type, did that resonate with you, or was that like, I haven't thought of that?
No, I did not. Yeah. Well, okay, I love to teach.
Yeah.
Let's start there.
I guess that's what I'm getting at, because you sort of found these ways to teach throughout your ministry.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, when we were in Mobile, I made 4 trips to Malawi, Africa, and taught in the preacher training schools there.
Okay, yeah.
Because our missionary was the one in Malawi, Africa, and he had the preacher training schools.
Yeah, okay.
And so I would go 2 weeks, usually with an elder or some member, and in those 2 weeks, 1 week we would teach what were called full-time preachers. That's really a misnomer.
Okay, yeah.
Because what it meant was they were partly supported to be able to do their preaching.
Okay.
They still had to farm to live. That's what most people in Malawi do. But on Sundays, they would ride the bicycles we would help buy. They would ride a bicycle, and they'd go from church to church and preach on kind of a circuit. And so we'd teach full-time 1 week, and then another week we'd teach all the part-timers, which means they just preach. Nobody pays them to do it.
Nobody pays them.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that we'd teach all the part-timers from a particular area. And I would teach, I'd always have whatever the missionary wanted me to do, I would teach.
Wow. That's neat. You speak of all of this. I'm just sort of zooming out as a lump sum. I know it hasn't all been sunshine and rainbows. It couldn't be. But you speak of this very well, as though you are enjoying and have enjoyed the journey. Is that a correct summary?
Yeah, beyond a shadow of a doubt.
Yeah. What the highest highs? I mean, what are top thing that sticks out in your time as a minister?
Oh, wow.
I know. Sorry. Hard question.
Well, I'm going to back up just a little.
Good.
When I was in Mobile, the first mission trip I made was to Guyana, South America. And mostly I helped door knock. I did preach one time during that event. I don't remember what. Somebody else was doing most of the preaching, but I did preach once. But I actually went and spent a night in a hut raised up on stilts.
Whoa.
I taught the Amur Indians. We got in a boat and went downriver a long way for me to be able to preach.
Wow.
There.
Yeah.
So, but when I came back, I told Teresa and I said, I do not plan again to go do door knocking anywhere. And the reason was because I quickly discovered I do not know the particular habits and the thinking of the people in that place.
Yeah.
So from that point forward, I've only gone and done either teach preachers or teach church leaders or stuff like that. That's where I've stayed. So I've been to Fiji, and I taught in the Bear Valley Extension there. I've been to Nicaragua, and that was a wild one because, again, the elders in Cookville were approached by what I call an ambassador from Nicaragua. He was an elder. All the elders in Managua had said, we got a problem, because they had a graduate, they had a Nicaraguan native that went to Abilene. He came back and he was teaching the new hermeneutic.
Oh.
And so they sent an elder to our elders, unknown to me. One day the elders came into me and said, you're going to Nicaragua. I said, I am. What am I going to do in Nicaragua?
Right.
So I went there to teach. I taught hermeneutics for 7 hours the first day. Man. And in 96-degree temperature and 96-degree, 96% humidity too. And just all we had was we were in a pavilion and there were ceiling fans. That's it.
Yeah.
I drank more water in 2 days than I've ever drank in my life.
No doubt.
So the next day I finished hermeneutics, the regular hermeneutics. Because I said, you've got to understand hermeneutics to understand the new hermeneutic. If you want to identify the new hermeneutic, you got to know the true hermeneutic.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's what I ended up doing on those. So all those mission trips have been highs. Going different. I've gone to other places too, but those have been highs. Frankly, the work where I am now has been an interesting high because they've allowed me, as they see what I can do. And for example, years ago when GBN first moved to Mississippi, of course they're at Olive Branch. You just well say Memphis. But when they moved to Mississippi, I asked if there was anything they needed. And they said, we need Bible classes. So in the early days, on my day off is Friday, supposedly. I don't take many days off, being honest. But I would get up, I would leave the house at 6 in the morning. I'd arrive at GBN at 9:30, and I'd start immediately with my first. As soon as they're ready, I'm ready. We start the class. I taught one 30-minute class every 45 minutes.
Wow.
And I would do 5 classes. I'd driven 3.5 hours to come. Taught 5 classes, and I drove home 3.5 hours.
Woo.
So, now I usually go, now I still am doing it, but now I'll go and I'll teach some on Thursday afternoon, spend the night.
Oh, good.
And I'll teach Friday till sometime after lunch and then drive home. And I now have, I don't know, in the neighborhood of 220 half-hour programs.
Whoa.
With GBN.
Yeah. That's fantastic.
So they let me do that.
They
let me do mission work. They encourage it. They send me on mission work. They don't mind me. I'm really teaching for 3 schools of preaching right at the moment. And they're okay with that. As long as I get my work done, they don't care. And so it's been fascinating to be there.
Wow. What keeps you going? What's been the motivator throughout all of this, or today, or has it evolved a little over the years? The motivating factor.
Ultimately, I think I started with a love for the Word of God that I saw in my dad and my mother, who I already told you about. And then developed a love for souls in about, when I was about 10 years old, 10, 11, 12, somewhere like that, a missionary from Australia came to Albuquerque, where my dad was. In those days, if we did all our chores, we got 50 cents, 2 quarters. Okay. I donated $1 to the church. My own choice.
Yeah.
Nobody made me do that.
Okay.
The other quarter, my sisters would tell you I was cheap. I preferred that I was just very careful with money.
Frugal, yes. It's a fine line between the two, but okay.
So I had my mother had a pill bottle that happened to be the right size to slip quarters in.
Yeah.
So I had, over however many weeks that would be, I had built up an entire pill bottle full of quarters. I heard this missionary from Australia, and he so impressed me with his love for souls and the work that I walked up to him afterward and I gave him my pill bottle, which probably was about $10.
Wow. Yeah.
Probably wasn't a lot to him.
Big sacrifice for you, though.
It
yes.
was. So that passion for souls is always there, and it is the motivator that'll keep you going all the time. You know, Teresa has told people, said, Gary, they say, when's he going to retire? And she said, I doubt he's ever going to retire.
Yeah.
And I usually tell people, well, whenever the Lord retires me.
Okay.
It could be I'm alive.
Yeah, well, hello. Okay, we've got some 6-year-olds here that are here with our podcast. Yeah, that's great.
Good to see all of
Hi,
you.
6-year-olds. So you say you'll retire when the Lord retires you.
And that could be that I
great.
am unable to preach anymore. That's possible.
Sure.
Or it could be.
Oh, nice.
So, you know, if I die, well, that's fine. If I die preaching, I'm good.
Yeah.
You know, Harvey Porter preached in Albuquerque, New Mexico. My dad was good friends with Harvey. And he preached 40 years for the Montgomery Boulevard Church. I don't think it was always called that, but that's what it was toward the end. And as I understand it, he taught Bible class and died between class and worship.
Wow. Huh.
And if I could do that,
that would be pretty
except
cool
for what it might do to the church. I don't want to disturb the church.
Right, it kind of ruins worship or whatever.
Yeah, it's kind of that is a dream in a sense of the word.
Right.
Well, I'm not going to remember the brother right now. He's written several songs in our book.
Oh.
And was a great preacher. And he wrote one song. Today is Someone's Last Day. It's one of his songs. I don't even think I've never seen it.
Yeah.
Okay, but I can tell you this: he would go preach in meetings, and they would ask him, "Will you lead some songs, some of your songs?"
Oh.
And he preached in a particular meeting, and they asked him to lead that song. Today is Someone's Last Day. He went back to wherever he was staying, and he died that night.
It was his.
It was his last day.
His last day.
And that's kind of what my dream, I guess.
Yeah. Well, to go doing what you love doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right there in the middle of it. Absolutely. I look forward to Sundays. I like Sundays. Just being with God's people.
Yeah.
Anytime. You know, it's part of what weeks like this are exhausting. I'm sure teaching hermeneutics for 7 hours in a distant land is also exhausting. But it's the best kind of tired.
It is.
Yeah, it's a good kind of
very
tired.
Good.
Well, thank you for sharing all of this with us. And there have been great lessons along the way that have really helped me, I know, and I think our listeners too. We appreciate it a lot.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity very much.
We appreciate you being with us today for Preachers in Training, and want to remind you that brand new episodes release every Thursday. Thursday is what I meant to say, from thelightnetwork.tv. If you subscribe in your favorite podcast app or on YouTube, then you never miss an episode. And on YouTube, if you ring that little bell thing, it gives you a notification whenever a new episode releases. So I want to remind you about that. You can contact us, preachers@thelightnetwork.tv. It's going to do it for this edition. Until next time, let's go preach the word.